Hello, everyone. Welcome to our May community meetup. We're so excited to have you here today. It looks like we have a really active chat already. Feel free to send in where you're tuning in from. We'd love to see everyone across the world. Sometimes we get some international folks. So today is all about AI. We have our AI engineering team today from Domo. We're really excited about it. I think it's going to get pretty technical. They're going to sneak some things that are coming later this year having to do with Domo AI, and it's going to be really cool. So Eddie, our director of community, usually hosts these. He's in Disney World today. So we're hoping that he's enjoying it with his family. Me and Sean are going to be co-hosting today. Sean, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, just for starters, no, I'm not hosting from prison today. I'm hosting from a friend's house in Arizona, so I'll just set the record straight there. But yeah, Sean McGowan, I'm over our paid and organic social here at Domo. So if you've engaged or been engaged with on social in the last couple months, that was me. Excited to be part of these. I think I've been behind the scenes in the past. I might show my face here and there, but nice to meet everybody. Thanks for being such a great part of what we do at Domo.
Awesome. Thanks, Sean. Our socials, if you've been keeping track of our socials lately, they've kind of been really active and booming. And a lot of you have shared things in Tag Domo. Sean is there resharing it. So keep doing that. We love to see it. The agenda today, I'll go over some community announcements, and then we'll move into presentations by our engineering team. We have Tim Hanna, Tyson Farley, Joe Leland Clark, and Jeremy Rogers here today. Okay, first things first, our community member of the month. We highlight one community member every month that's been absolutely outstanding on the forums. We are highlighting April's community of the member of the month. We have not announced May yet, so it could be one of you that are on the call today. David Cunningham is incredible. He joined the forum at the very beginning of April, and by the end of April, he was our community member of the month because he was so active and became a coach within less than a month. We have never seen that before. It is the fastest anyone has ever climbed the ranks before. And now that he's been a member for just under 2 months, he's answered 89 questions from our community members. He's making it really difficult for other coaches to jump in and answer questions. So anyways, David, thank you so much. You've been amazing, and we're excited to have you on the forums. All right, next is our Forum Frenzy Day. I'm so excited to announce our Forum Frenzy Day. We have never done anything like this before. Save your best, your hardest, your most interesting use case questions and bring them to the forum on June 26th. I've recruited some of our top Domo experts. So we're bringing in our internal teams. We have our technical success managers, we have our education training team, and we have our solution consultants. They're going to be sitting in the forum all day, just waiting for questions to roll in and answering them in real time. So I want to see a lot of questions, a lot of answers come out of this day. So we have a lot of great searchable documentation for the future. June 26th, mark your calendars for that. Okay, let's get to the content for today. We have Jeremy Rogers and Tyson Farley. They're going to be talking about Domo unstructured data services. They are going to show how you can use AI to perform question and answering sources such as customer support cases, knowledge base articles, emails, sales call transcripts, meeting records, etc., all within Domo so they can craft relevant responses for you. I'm really excited. I'll let Jeremy and Tyson take it away.
All right.
Oh, and just one thing, sorry. Ask questions in the chat. We'll pop in, they'll answer. We can save them towards the end, but likely if they're simple and they can answer them right during their presentation, they will. So feel free to ask questions. Sorry, I'm out.
That's all good. Yes, questions are very well received. If I could have my screen shared to start, please. Okay. Where to begin? As an introduction to Domo Unstructured Data Services, there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes. There's sadly not a lot visually we can show about unstructured data services, but we're going to show what we can. And I think for that to be best facilitated, it's to start with a little bit of a classroom introduction to what unstructured data is. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Why might we care about unstructured data? Well, many of us are familiar with structured data, that can be ordered and categorized in a particular way. Commonly, it's comprising things like lists and spreadsheets and database tables, all the wonderful things that we do have in Domo. Unstructured data is just about everything else. You've got text, images, audio, the things that don't follow common structural patterns or fit neatly in what we mentioned previously of the structured data, hence it is unstructured. Certainly possible to store that information and data in a spreadsheet or database table, but having it stored there doesn't do a lot for you. It renders it inert. There's not a lot of reusability except for what it represents. It doesn't empower us to do anything just by sitting there. In other words, there's no real way for us to take action on the unstructured data with conventional structured means. On top of that, unstructured data makes up the vast majority of our digital world. You can imagine any given social media post, it's comprised of words and pictures and video. All of these come together to form that media post, and all of that is unstructured data. That all comes together to form a single meaning, but then the only meaning is that it is a single post. So we make use of something called a vector database. A vector database is specifically crafted to empower us to leverage the unstructured data that is there. A vector database is a storage device composed of embeddings or vectors that allow a machine, a computer, to mathematically calculate the similarity, especially semantic similarity, which we'll get to in a little bit here. First, a simple example. Embeddings themselves are high-dimensional lists of numbers that represent media like text, images, and audio. And here we have an example of very short lists of embeddings, just 2 numbers per list, just for simplicity. So we can see how those embeddings relate to one another when we graph them on a 2-dimensional coordinate plane. We have gender on the x-axis and age on the y-axis. So pick any 2 points and you can visually see the semantic similarity, or in other words, you can see the meaning of the words, how they are graphed, how they might be close to one another. So if we were to take this coordinate plane as our vector database representation, if someone were to query this database with a word like grandmother, you can see the responses we might get back are going to be close to woman or adult, just as grandfather is close to man and adult. You get those similar things. To further illustrate how a vector database can differentiate the inputs semantically, simple example is when a user's query is written as dress shirts versus if you were to reverse the words and have a shirt dress. Both search terms contain the same words but carry with them different semantic meaning, and which changes due to the relative surrounding context. You might see how an e-commerce site would benefit greatly for being able to surface relevant products like this to its users based on the query. An additional example for further illustration of semantic meaning is you can take a simple sentence like Sean ate some pizza, and that sentence changes drastically if we rearrange it to say some pizza ate Sean. You can see there that it changes in quite a dramatic fashion. So what can we do with this capability? One very popular use case today is how vector databases can enhance AI, especially LLM chatbots. A vector database can provide an external source of relevant information to a large language model. LLM chatbots are typically trained up to a certain point on data, so asking it about current events or the latest news could produce some interesting and probably incorrect responses when it makes its best guess. LLMs simply don't know everything either. You might have a particular work-related document, even proprietary information. Obviously, the LLM's not going to know much about it. You might have heard stories or experienced yourself where a chatbot's response to a given question can come up short, or is just flat out wrong entirely because it does not have that information, something that's more pertinent to it. A vector database can fill that gap for the AI chatbot. And by so doing, you can make a chatbot, a spur-of-the-moment subject matter expert when it has that vast amount of information and relevant information. So I'm going to turn time over to Jeremy now for an example to show us going forward.
Great. Thanks, Tyson. And if we can share my screen now, let's see. Let's jump back here real quick. Okay, can you see that? Okay. So I think that was a great foundation that Tyson just laid out for us. And I think I wanted to talk just a little bit about, how this unstructured data kind of comes to work for us. Out there, 80 to 90% of the data, as Tyson kind of had alluded to, is unstructured data. And I think, historically, we've really not been able to take full advantage of that data because it's not been in a structured format. So you think about a database table where you have, a column that's like first name or last name. We can reuse that all over in an application where with, say, emails or blog posts or images or audio files, we're kind of stuck to consume that data in the way that it was originally constructed. So I know that is, I guess, up until the emergence of LLMs and vector databases. So it really kind of unlocks us to be able to kind of reconstruct that data and reuse it in different ways, which is very neat. So a question that often comes up when we talk about, working with LLMs in vector databases is, why not just go to the vector database directly? And Tyson had alluded to a few of these beforehand, but we have internal information within our companies, for one, take knowledge bases, HR documents, call transcripts, customer service tickets, things of that nature, that the LLM just doesn't know anything about. It's never seen that data, so it's not going to be able to answer questions about that data. And then Tyson had also mentioned a kind of a knowledge cutoff where you take OpenAI or Claude, they stop training at a certain point, and anything that happens after that point in time, it's not going to know anything about. So also another use for these vector databases. And then probably one of the bigger reasons to use these vector databases is we just don't know where that information is coming from. When we ask a question, we get a response back, did that come from, a blog post that somebody wrote, that from somebody who didn't really know much about the topic at hand, or is it a scholarly article? And I think as we use these vector databases, they really help to kind of solve some of these problems. So I thought it'd be fun to do a little demo or a kind of a proof of concept of how this all works. And so I'll show the PDF here in just a second, but just to kind of give you some context of what we're going to be querying. There was a PDF I found from NASA that just talks about their Artemis mission. So going and exploring the moon in hopes of eventually being able to have human missions to Mars. This particular document is exploring the selection of landing sites on the moon. And so just to kind of give you some context of what we're looking at. And so if I come over to here, I just want to come over to the document real quick. And what we've done is we chunked this up to 300 word chunks, and we've put it into the vector store. And using some of the methodology that Tyson's talked about, we're able to actually come in here into Domo, because I've loaded this data into a vector store and we've connected it to our chatbot. We're able to ask a question. And so I asked, how many lunar surface missions do we expect to see in the next 4 years? It's a pretty specific question. But because it's backed by our data, we're going to see that we're going to get a very similar answer to what we see in the actual PDF. So we see 22 lunar surface missions in the next 4 years, half of those occurring on the moon's south polar region. And then we come in here and we see the same thing, in our article. So we're really, we're able to link that back even to source articles or a page where that came from. We know exactly where we got the material, so we can even, if someone wants to explore a little bit more about that data, then they can do that. So definitely a powerful use case. Now, having said that, this is just kind of in a proof of concept state, and really, I think where Domo starts to shine when we talk about the AI space is we've been developing some of these core capabilities of, for example, keeping, like we'd want in a production case, this data to always be up to date. And we can see that leveraging existing Domo tools, we can really create a very strong use case for these AI chatbots and vector databases. I'll pass it over to Tyson for a second to just talk about that.
Yeah, I wanted to build off of what Jeremy's talking about there. Domo has had its space, its hold on the structured data for a good portion of time now. You can bring in relevant data. You have all these connectors. You've got Magic ETL, and those things help you to keep your data up to date. It's current. It's constantly coming in. But we also want to be able to expand that out to the unstructured data space too. That way, you've got all forms of data. They're coming into Domo. You know that it's up to date. You know that it's true to their sources. And then once that's able to interact with our Domo AI, you know that it's being treated with AI that is secure and transparent and with the proper permissions. You have the same functionality that you've always had in Domo of being able to manage it through governance and the grants. And then you have the ability to link back to the sources of the material to make sure that the data you're able to interact with is, it's not just being hallucinated by the LLM, but you have the relevant information that's pertinent and you can make decisions and act upon it. I'd like to turn back over to Jeremy. Actually, he can show some more examples of how we might leverage this Domo ability and its vector database.
Great. Okay. So, and well, both for within Domo and for customers is a customer support case. So I think several companies have customer support divisions where basically it's their job to answer customer questions as they come in and teach them about the product. And the reality is that we oftentimes have a base of knowledge, a corpus of data that explains how to use our products. And sometimes it's just not the easiest to find the answer to. And then in addition to that, we have previous customer questions about data. And one thing that we've certainly looked at and have been testing with vector databases is passing some of that information into our AI assistant and going to the LLM to either do question and answering over that data or to just have it draft an email directly back to the customer. And so I have some mocks to kind of show what that might look like. So you can imagine, you have an App Studio app and your customer support data is coming in. You're able to click on a conversation with the customer. And you have your history there of what you've been talking about. And the customer support agent might want to reply to that person and they can generate a response that goes and pulls from, based on what we're talking about, we can pull from that corpus of data from our knowledge base and pull on previous support tickets to just draft an email. And it is just that, a draft. There's obviously a human in the loop and still work to be done here. But you can see how, a big portion, a heavy lift has been done to kind of alleviate some of the work that customer support agent would otherwise have to do. And if they want to expand upon that answer, maybe we have a chatbot that we can kind of go and ask follow-up questions and keeping in mind obviously that we're linking back to actual knowledge base articles and other sources so that they can go learn a little bit more about the questions that they're asking. So definitely a powerful use case, and this is just one of several. I think the sky's the limit when it comes to vector databases and AI, and there's definitely several different use cases. I'll toss it back over to Tyson, and if we can share Tyson's screen, I'm sure you can talk a bit about other use cases.
Thank you, Jeremy. Actually, I will admit the difficulty that we had in preparing this presentation was limiting it down to how many use cases there are. It's really whatever your imagination can come up with, and frankly, my imagination didn't go that far. So I only have about maybe 3 or 4 examples I'd like to show, in addition to the ones that Jeremy's already shown. One very, very simple example, one that we're probably all very familiar with, is a search engine like Google can take advantage of the ability to perform a semantic search. Again, going back to the dress shirt versus shirt dress, if you actually search those things in Google, you will get different pages. So that shows that they're doing more than just keyword search alone. And then having the vector database, you can leverage that too. And I'll take just a brief moment here to talk about the vector database capability we're building into Domo. Takes advantage of both as well. You can leverage keyword search versus semantic search too. And then another example similar to the search related thing is like an e-commerce site like Amazon. If I am specifically searching for dress shirts that I want to wear to my job, I probably don't want the same things that come up as shirt dress, at least personally. You know, other mileage might vary. Some more examples, going back to that example that Jeremy showed with the NASA article. You can have, these can be large documents. You can have several large documents, and all of these being at the fingertips of an LLM can help it to sift through the data to provide relevant information. We know that LLM context windows are limited, and having a vector database provides just so much more vastness to that space that the LLM can tap into. And then it can, again, bring up the relevant information, and you can source back to it. And then taking that a step further, you've got your subject matter expert chatbots. You can build ones that are built on specific buckets or repositories of these vector index, so that you can either surface it for customers or have it internally. And these are actually something that I want to show a little bit more of. Let's see if I can get to the correct screen here. So here's an example of how this might look. Maybe one day it's to be built like this in Domo. Who knows? Maybe if there's enough support, we can get a rush job on it. I'd like to see what people think about it. But here we have a simple example. If you want to be able to create a custom chatbot, this is just one example, again, of the many use cases we have available to us. So you could click here into your HR helper and get relevant answers to your questions that has the source material behind it. You've got your employee policies. You've got, I'm not going to pretend I know what other policies there might be, but maybe your HR department has plenty of documents to support this. And this you don't have to send out an email even. You can just interact with it, ask follow-up questions, you get your answers right away. Additional use cases might even, well, if we wanted to create our own chatbot, perhaps maybe we're in the process of making that one that supports Jeremy's customer support ticket use case. We go in here, we provide the necessary steps that we want to do. And let's say we're creating our customer care hub. We provided the valid resources, but we eventually get to this point where you can provide the configuration and you have this thing up and running to help your entire support team. They're not as bogged down with tickets. They can answer tickets faster. This just helps to accomplish that job so much faster. And I think that's it. That's all we got to share.
Awesome. Does anyone have any questions? I haven't seen any come in. Great. Well, I thought that was awesome. I learned a lot. These features are coming later this year in Domo, right?
Yeah, definitely. I know it's a lot to take in. But yeah, some of them are coming. For example, the AI assistant I think is coming sometime. Yeah, summer or fall, and yeah, and then others are kind of exploratory. So we'll see where we land with everything. But just we're excited about it and wanted to get on and share kind of some of the things that we're thinking about.
If people want to show, excitement about it, it might spur some people that are in the decision-making process to perhaps that we lean into that. So
awesome. And quick plug for the Ideas Exchange. If you want to see something in AI that maybe wasn't shown today, or as things come out, put them in the Ideas Exchange. In the community forums, we make sure those are routed to the right product manager that owns them. So I love that plug. We love listening to our customers. One question here, these were the normal capability AI does. Domo being an analytics tool, what is it I can do to ease analytics capabilities?
I can talk a little bit about that. Maybe I didn't touch on it enough, but about what Domo can do to leverage it. But then knowing that the data that's built into this, again, yeah, there you can probably see this capability with other things. But when it's performed in Domo, you have that assurance that it's all staying within the Domo ecosystem. Your data is not being leaked out to somewhere where you don't want it, prying eyes to be able to see. And then in addition to that, it's all just end-to-end management. You're starting from the ground up. That if you want to get to this point of an app that the AI can help with, then Domo can help with that lift and take care of some of the troubles there. I hope that answers your question.
I'll add to that too. I know as part of, because we've tried to keep it fairly high level here, but there are other AI capabilities with AI chat, for example, in where you can actually have a conversation with your data, and it'll create charts and graphs for you. And I know with page generation, we can create whole dashboards even with AI that really just are very powerful AI tools. So what we're talking about here is just one of many different things that we're looking at, and it's kind of just those introductory steps. And then I think we have a follow-up even in a few weeks from now to talk a little bit more about AI chat as well.
Perfect. There's one other question that I wanted to bring in from Paul, just on the availability of the chatbot creation. I think you already touched on that, just later this year, right?
Yeah, it's a possibility. I'm not personally the one that can guarantee anything, but I just wanted to show a couple examples of where we could go, and if that's of interest to people, we'd love to know. Again, there's so many ideas we could go with it. We'd love to help ease the lift for many of our customers.
Perfect. Thanks, Tyson. Thanks, Jeremy. Perhaps for some of these questions that we couldn't get to, you can field these in the chat, or if we don't get to yours today, reach out to us on the forum, reach out to us on LinkedIn. We'll get you your answers however we can. All right, Anna.
Great. Yes, we'll get these answered in the chat. Tyson and Jeremy can jump in here. Okay, awesome. Thank you. Now we're going to bring Joe and Tim to the stage. They're going to be talking about universal models and forecasting. They will use AI to help you make sense of your data so you can make data-driven decisions. They will demonstrate how you can take your data, easily prepare it for a forecast, run a forecast, and then display the results of that forecast in a simple visualization. Awesome. I will get out of here and let you guys go.
Awesome, thank you. It looks like I'm not able to share my slides. Anna, would you mind pulling up the slides that oh, there it goes, sweet. I think those are my screens. Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you everyone. We're happy to be here. Tim and we are working on a product called Universal Models, specifically forecasting. And this is an initiative on the AI team that we are trying to bring out-of-the-box AI solutions to customers throughout Domo, both internal and external. So the first portion of this universal model, well, we're looking to develop models that can solve tasks within Domo in a universal fashion without any lift on the customer's part. Some of these problems that we're looking to tackle, obviously, is forecasting is one of them. That's the one we'll be highlighting today. But on the roadmap, we also have other problems such as PII detection, which is personal identifiable information detection, sentiment analysis, and other services and problems that you can solve with AI. So that's the bulk of what we are going to talk about, specifically forecasting and some of the solutions we're designing to bring that capability to customers right out of the box. Awesome. So for universal models, what I'm going to do is just kind of give a little high level walkthrough of what happens in our universal model for forecasting specifically. So the first thing we start with is our user. There we go, there's my screen. So the first thing that we started with is our user, and these are both internal and external customers. And what I mean by that is internal versus external is there are customers within Domo that utilize and consume Domo information. And then there are power users that go into Domo and generate content, whether that's through data or whether that's through apps or dashboards or cards or anything. So both of these users we have in mind as we generate this forecasting example. So for example, if we have data coming in and I'm a consumer, or in other words, an external is the word I'm using here, and I'm consuming the data, my day-to-day usage of Domo, then I can use this forecasting model automatically on specific parts throughout cards or perhaps dashboards or apps as we're developing these concepts for the future. These capabilities will just come to me out of the gate, and I don't have to do anything. I just simply have to look at the projection of the forecasting of my time series data to get insight out of it. And then secondly, for internal users or more power user customers, these are customers that we are developing an API, a robust API that they can use, you can use, if you'd like to build forecasting specifically into a portion of your app using our forecasting model, or a model that you generated for your forecasting, which we'll talk a little bit about here in a moment. So that's our first step, is the user. The next step that we have is, like I was talking about, is our forecasting API. And this forecasting API is really going to be one part of a suite of services that we want to expose through our API.
Excuse me.
And so, for example, if we want to do forecasting, we have a standard input and output schema that if you want to predict something on time series data, all you have to do is format your data in a way that adheres to this schema, and then boom, you get to execute the model. No lift on your part, execute it, get the result back, and then bring insight into whatever, either it's an app or it's a card or any other portion of Domo that you'd like to bring that capability towards. And then secondly, when it comes to, oh, sorry, can we go back? Yeah, thank you. For the standard and for the Adrenaline output, these are different outputs. Adrenaline is a term that we use in our engineering side of things that makes it easier to build a data pipeline throughout a particular process. So these are other outputs that we'd like to bring to the API, where you, the user, can adjust the request headers in a way that you want to say, I want this output in a CSV format or a JSON format or a YAML format or any type of other typical data format, so that you can integrate it into your app seamlessly. In addition, we are talking about varied input. So right now, the forecasting API and the model itself is dependent on structured sequential data when it comes to the time series. And this is just the nature of forecasting and prediction and the ML space of that. As you get more and more gaps in your data, the confidence that we have in the ability to predict on that data drops. So if we can have a high standard of frequency and formatting of our data, then the output of that, then we hear the output of that data in a structured fashion, however we want it. So right now it's very sequential. In the future, we're looking to build a little bit more smartness, you could say, into it, so that we can predict some of gaps in your data, so you, the user, don't have to have completely sequential data in your data to use the forecasting service and other services as well. So that's a capability we'd like to bring into the future. Moving forward, the next step we have is that, so we've executed the API, we're going into the actual model, or into the actual service, I should say. The really important part that we're bringing into our AI service capability, particularly forecasting, is the concept of validations. Now, this is really important so that we can validate the data that's going into the model is the structure that the model expects so that we can guarantee a high level of output of forecasting when it gets executed. This means that the data is frequenced in a way, meaning that we have daily or monthly or hourly or yearly. It needs to adhere to those structures that we designate when we make the call. And in addition, this also reduces our unnecessary usage, our model execution. So if we have bad data going in and we can verify that before we even execute the model, it'll save you, the customer, if you're using your own model, your own forecasting model, and it'll save computation on our side as well, to not have to execute that model and figure out that we've actually inserted bad data before we execute it. So this speeds up, your applications. If there's bad data, this speeds up the ability to get back the result, and also more importantly, it saves cost on the customer side as well. Awesome.
Joe,
Next slide.
I've got a question for you in real time here.
Yeah.
From Rob. I think this is a good spot for it. Just wants to know if we can compare the forecast to the actuals when they occur in the future.
When they compare the forecast to the actuals when they occur in the future. That's a great question. Right now, that functionality isn't built into place, but that is a great idea. Post that on an idea form, and we can definitely bring that into our feature sheet, and we can discuss that as we go forward. That's a great idea. Thanks, Rob.
And then we've got one more from
Can I
Miles.
interrupt on that? Can I interrupt on that last question? That actually will be possible. You'll have to, when I show how we implement this in cards, it'll just be how you design what you're forecasting off of versus what data is actually in the card, and then when it merges that data. So it is possible. It will be possible. Yes.
Great. Thank you. And then one more here from Miles. Does this forecasting API you speak of run mostly on LLMs or analytical routines?
Perhaps if you could, I don't have all the information I think I need to answer that question fully. It's not an LLM that's running. It's a model that we have built in-house to forecast on a time series data. More technically, really, it's using an ARIMA or an ETS model that is coming from a particular model provider that we've tweaked and tuned in a way that can predict in a really high capability fashion. So it's not an LLM and an analytical routine. I'm not quite sure what that statement means, but it really is running a model that we've developed in-house for the customer's usage at no maintenance to the customer. It just comes to you.
Great. Miles, if
I
that
hope that
wasn't enough,
answered.
yeah, if you could expand on that in the chat or reach out to us on the side, that would be great. All right. Thanks. Back to it.
Sweet. Awesome. So moving down our track of the API. So now we're at the point of where we can do model preparation. And this is where Domo's AI model management side really shines. So I talked about earlier of how we have our in-house forecasting model that we built. We built this in a way, not the model, but the service layer of our API in a way of where you, the user, the customer, and this is so cool, you get to choose what model you want to solve the problem that you have in mind. For example, if you have forecasting or time series data and you have a well-tuned model on a data set or a collection of data that you know quite well, and you've built that model, you've trained it, you've tuned it, you now want to bring it in, well, you can import that model through a list of our ML connectors. We bring that into Domo, and then you can choose to use that model either in the API itself or generically setting it at a settings layer of of that particular model to use when any forecasting is done throughout your Domo instance. So for example, if I have a model that I've trained on my particular sales organization and it does really well and it knows the nuances of the data very well, and I want to use that model for my time series forecasting instead of the one that Domo's built, which is a little bit more jack of all trades general model, then you can bring that in, and all you have to do is a couple clicks of buttons to make sure that you import the model and configure that model to be the forecasting model, and make sure it has to adhere to the schema that we provide so that we can execute your model. And boom, that's all you have to do. If you go to any other of your forecasting endpoints or any other forecasting capability throughout your instance, it'll start to be using your your model that you fine-tune for your use case. So that's really, really cool, I think. Not a lot of analytics tools provides that ability to hot swap out models in a very agnostic, general fashion. So that's what we get to use. So when we build that model preparation as we're about to execute it, based on whatever you've told us, either through the API request itself or through the settings, is we go out and grab all the metadata of that model, or essentially the data that we need to know how to execute your model for you. And the second point I have here is that, again, this is really designed for Domo versus a customer, is that if you want to use our out-of-the-box solution, you can at no work on your end, or if you have a fine-tuned model, it's very minimal effort. In fact, it's just a couple click of buttons, making sure that the schema is adhered to, and boom, you get that capability right out the door. So that's a really good part, and I'm very happy about that part as well. I think it brings a lot of capability to the users. Okay, so next slide. So we have our model prepared. We're ready to go. Now we go to our model execution engine, which again, this is provides the ability to execute these models across all of our different ML connectors, whether that's Hugging Face, OpenAI, Amazon Bedrock, Databricks, right? These are all model providers where you host your model, and you can bring it into Domo to use it. So we use our existing model execution service that we have, and you don't have to worry about what model host it is. As long as we interface with it, we have the ability to execute that model for you. And what's really good about this is that in our side and also your side, like I talked about, this hot swappable model ability allows the data science team on our side, Domo internal, to switch out models as we get better and better models with no impact to the customer, only added benefit, without changing any of your API requests or any of your apps that you built on top of our API. You don't have to do anything. We just swap out a better model and you get better results. Or like I said earlier, you can always swap out a better model for yourself at any moment, and it'll work as long as it adheres to our schema. It'll work out of the gate, and you can bring that value to you or the customers that you serve with minimal effort on your end and no downtime as well, which is quite important. Awesome. Next slide. So that kind of brings to the end of our whole journey of this forecasting demo. Please feel free, if you have any questions about it, please reach out to me, post questions on the forum. We'd love to talk more about this topic as we go forward. So now I'd like to just quickly do a little demonstration of executing this model and how you'd use it in your side of things. So for example, I'm looking at a data set here, example of forecasting data. We have a date column, and more importantly, we have a sales revenue column. So for this forecasting model, it needs to be a time series data set. Essentially, what it means is it has to have a time axis, and it has to have data on which we can predict from. And right now, I'm using my sales revenue column. So if I come back over to forecast into our AI services playground, this is the sandbox we have. Let's see, I don't think that is not switching screens when I go. That's interesting. Let me do this. Oh, it's actually a different UI on the page. That is interesting. Let me try to, pardon me, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. I'm gonna share it one more time. There we go. Okay. I believe, is that yep, there we go. Okay. So we're here on the forecasting side. We see we're going to use our forecasting service, and we're going to use the default model. We're going to execute this model. This is just a quick demonstration that will be available to the customers in the UI to test out your models. So I'm going to click the forecasting example data. that pop-up isn't showing in the screen that I can see, but I'm choosing the data set that we had looked at earlier. And I'm choosing the date column, the sales revenue. It looks like it's not updating on the screen, but it is actually, I'm putting in the data here. And we're gonna do a forecasting length of 50 days. And now I'm gonna run the model. And I hope that this updates in the screen share. It looks like it's a static screen share, which isn't helpful. But this is an example. I'm not sure if you can see it on your screen, but on my end here, you can see an output of the model, and you can see the prediction and confidence intervals that come from that data set using that time series data. It looks like it's not showing up. So if you have any more questions, please reach out to me, and I can help out once this comes out to a demo or a beta, and then to a release to an actual all customers that we have. And with that, I'll turn the time over to Tim real quickly here to just wrap up our portion.
There was a question real quick that might be for you, Joe. Shannon, hey Shannon. Shannon asks, how will we be able to assess model performance?
That's a great question. We don't have the ability to assess model performance right now. We have the ability to assess some of our models internally, but that's a great idea that we would like to bring to the customers so that they can see how well the model is doing. So again, post it on that idea exchange forum, and we can add that, and we can take a look at that as we move forward.
Awesome. Thanks, Tim. It's over to
Okay, share my screen. I'll go ahead and start. So I'll talk about how we're going to incorporate these models into our App Studio and some of our visualizations and cards a little bit. And we're hoping to release this later this summer. And this will be calling Joe's APIs. So what you'll see here is you have a card. This card's based off of a time series inside the app. You can see there's a little button that's generate an AI forecast. And just the intent will be is that it'll then generate the forecast and display a forecast card. And I'll go through how that's going to be set up a little bit really quickly. We'll have this capability in authoring an App Studio where, at least at first, you can add this forecasting with AI to a card. And it'll take you through a series of steps, various parameters that you want to add on the forecast, like how many seasonality periods, how long you want to go, and also the ability to say, let's say your card is showing a year's worth of data, but you want the input to the forecast to be 4 years of data. So there'll be an ability to expand the data that you want to use as an input to feed your forecast and provide info to your forecast. And then it'll take the results of that forecast and combine it with the data that's in the card to display it all in one card. So you'll see the 1 year of data, the forecast that might be based off of a separate set of data, like maybe all time, all in the same card. And then it'll add that button to the card so you can generate the forecast. We also want to eventually add the capability so the card just comes up with the forecast on it, if that's what you would prefer. But they'll take a little bit more on the authoring side. And really quickly, I wanted to show you guys something that we're also hoping to release later. Let me show you what's powering the card with the forecast. This is something we're calling DML. It's a markup language that we've developed for describing visualizations. And Domo visualizations. And this is just some of the DML that would be powering this card. You can see here we have a SQL query. That's the data on the card. And I have these properties, which is a post process of a forecast. So it's taking the results of this query and running it through the forecast right now. And then it takes those results. You can see it's got an ID of query on the query, and we pass that into a chart. Down here, I cut off the line numbers, but you can see it's being passed in as source on the chart. We have a V stack, so it's vertically stacking, and then there's some properties to display on the chart. So this gives you more flexibility for the chart. And we have a bunch of elements that we're developing, and we hope to release this so that we can. This is obviously a very pro code formatting for a chart or charts. There's no reason you can't do multiple charts or even multiple queries in this. And we're hoping to release all this later this year. And that's it. I had the short part. So what are DML strengths? DML is just XML. It's just it just does our we just render certain aspects based off of this XML. So it's just XML.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Tim. Any other questions for these two while we still have them here with a few minutes to go? Give some time for typing if anyone's typing out a question. All right. Looks like no questions. If you do have some, share them in the chat before we end here. Otherwise, go to the forum or reach out to us through other channels.
Oh, it looks like we do have a question here. Any timeline on when it'll be available in beta?
We're hoping July, probably more likely August.
Okay. From Matthew, hi Matthew, will users define the variables to determine the forecast? Will the model be able to determine the weight of each variable to optimize model performance?
That's a good question. Right now, it relies on user input to choose the variables for the forecasting. However, we have thought about, well, really it's just looking for a time, like a date column in Domo, and then some sort of long or decimal data, usually in the forecasting side. So it picks that out. It's not, but it's just looking at the data type in that particular data set. But again, we can add some more functionality to that, and then customers can always choose the variables they want when the model gets executed. And then will the model be able to determine the weight of each variable to optimize model performance? So as of now, this forecasting model that we have is a single predictive forecasting model, meaning that it only is looking at a time series data on two axes. One, the time, and then two, some sort of daily increment of that particular data. As we move forward and we get better and better, and we just add more functionality to this, the ability to add your own multiple weights or multiple variables into the model, not particularly our model, perhaps we can build that schema into it, might be available in the future so that you can add more complex forecasting models into your application. Good question.
Just to clarify, all of these events are posted on the community forums after all of the recordings, so you can find them there. If you want to rewatch this, you can go to the exact same link that you clicked on to attend. Let's see. Okay, if you have any more questions, keep putting them in the chat. We'll try and answer them in the last few minutes we have, or else we'll answer them on the community forums if you ask them there. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Joe. Just a couple more announcements to close this out. If you love AI, if you can't get enough of it, if you want to learn more, it's a new topic for Domo. It's all the buzz right now on the internet. We are hosting an AI Insights live stream series. It's a 5-part series. We're going to be adding even more on as well. This is just part 1, segment 1. We had our first last week. That's available on the community forums now. And then we have 4 upcoming sessions in the next couple of months. So you can find all of these on the community forums and make sure to add them to your calendar. And then to close us out, register for our next community meetup. This is all about Magic ETL. We have Andrea Henderson, who is the product manager over Magic ETL. She's coming on. She's bringing her engineers. They're going to go over some things we announced at Domopalooza, as well as sneak some future things that are coming this summer. We also have Bryce from Angle Point. He's going to come on and show a really, really cool use case that he built out in Domo using Magic ETL. So we're really excited for that. Thank you so much for joining. I just took a look back at some of the people and places that have joined. We have the Netherlands, we have quite a few from Michigan, Indiana, a lot of Utah, obviously. Domo's here in Utah, Arizona. Thank you so much. We had hundreds join live, and we will see you next month.